Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm so glad to have you here, and I'm excited to share some new insights with you about codependency. Let's talk about how to break free from codependency patterns in your romantic relationships. So, what is codependency? There are a lot of definitions out there of codependency but the definition that best explains the romantic relationship side of it is that codependency is behavioral condition in which someone with low sense of self-esteem relies heavily on external validation for a sense of worth and value. This is a definition I heard from the recovery codependency coach Haley Maggie. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her last name, and I can completely relate to that. A codependent person looks to their partner to repair their self-esteem, alleviate their pain, and complete their inner emptiness. The codependent person keeps working to try and please their partner to ensure that they get love, the love that they crave. It becomes a self-perpetuating habit with obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. Codependency is also characterized with a loss of identity. To be codependent is to be out of touch with one's feelings, needs, and desires. This is a very important definition, and I feel that is the essence of codependency, not knowing who we are. Those self-defeating, learned behaviors or character defects that result in a diminished capacity to initiate or participate in loving relationships is the definition given by Ernie Larson. And I put it here on purpose because she mentions something very important. And that is that codependency is actually a learned behavior. That's very important for us to know because if we have learned how to be codependent, well, the good news is that we can unlearn those behaviors and establish new ones that will serve us better in the future. So I'm going to ask you right now to do a quick activity with me. We are going to go over a couple of slides with different traits of codependent persons, right? And I want you to mark each characteristic that we go over with a 0 if it's never a problem for you. Mark the characteristic with a 1 if it occasionally is a problem for you. And mark it with 2 if it is a frequent problem. So later, you can use this as a guide to establish your goals and what you have to be working on. So let's go over those checklists. A lot of codependent people often don't feel happy, content, or peaceful with themselves. They look for happiness outside themselves. They latch onto whoever or whatever they think can provide happiness. They feel terribly threatened by the loss of anything or anyone they think provides their happiness. They believe other people can't or don't love them. They try to prove that they're good enough to be loved. They don't take the time to see if other people are good for them. They desperately seek love and approval. Those last two are part of my history. Right. So what happens when we don't take the time to see if somebody is a good fit for us? We literally just jump all into a relationship just because somebody showed us a little bit of affection or a little bit of interest. And we are like, oh my gosh, yes, give me the love I crave. And then we end up regretting that because that person might not at all be a good fit for you. So it's important to remember to take our time and consider who is going to be the right fit for us. This exercise, by the way, is very helpful if you aren't sure if you're codependent or no. So going through those checklists, we can determine whether you're codependent. A lot of codependent people often lose interest in their own lives when they love. They worry that other people will leave them. This is the fear of abandonment. They don't believe that they can take care of themselves. They stay in relationships that don't work. They tolerate abuse to keep people loving them. They feel trapped in bad relationships, or they leave bad relationships and then form new ones that also don't work. And they wonder if they will ever find love. This is a very important checklist as well when it comes to the loss of identity and the sense of selves, because we aren't sure how to take care of ourselves outside of that relationship. We've been so codependent on that particular individual that outside of that relationship, we don't know who we are. We don't know how to live our lives. And this is one of the main reasons why it's so hard for many people to leave toxic or abusive relationships. They have forgotten what they love, what their dreams are, what their self looks like alone, separate from somebody else. Another thing that codependent people often do or are is that they're caretakers in the bedroom. They have sex when they don't want to. They have sex when they'd rather be held, nurtured, and loved. They try to have sex when they're angry or hurt. They refuse to enjoy sex because they're so angry at their partner. They have a difficult time asking for what they need in bed, and that's a big one, and it's so common in codependent relationships. One of the biggest issues in codependent people is that they lack boundaries. They don't know how to speak their truth and really communicate what they really want, what they really feel. So even if they don't enjoy doing some particular stuff in the bedroom, they do it anyway because they're afraid that if they speak up, oh, I don't like that. Can you please don't do that? Maybe you can do that because I would like that better. They don't do it because they're afraid that maybe someone will take the love away from them, or that they will leave them, or that they won't like them anymore, or maybe they will judge them. So they just put up with things they don't like. They force themselves to have sex anyway. They reduce sex to a technical act. They also wonder why they don't enjoy sex or make up reasons to abstain. A lot of codependent people often also think and feel responsible for other people, for people's feelings, needs, action, choices, wants, well being, lack of well being, and ultimate destiny. So I'll give you an example. For example, if you're a codependent person and your partner isn't happy or he's just in a bad mood today, you feel responsible for that. You feel that it's your fault and you are going out of your way to make him feel better, Um, or vice versa. If he's in a happy mood or, if he's having a good day, you'll also be having a good day. Otherwise, you will, like try your best to fix somebody else's problem. And I used to do that a lot because I always put the blame on myself. If he isn't happy about something, it's my fault and I have to fix it. And I would go and try find ways to fix stuff that were not even my problem, right? They feel anxiety, pity, and guilt when other people have a problem, as we just mentioned. They feel compelled, almost forced to help that person solve the problem, such as offering unwanted advice, giving a rapid fire series of suggestions, or fixing feelings. It's not your job, okay? But let's talk about it later. They feel angry when their help isn't effective, or they wonder why others don't do the same for them. You know, um, Many codependent people would often, go out of their way to please others, but when it comes to their own needs, they often, put themselves in the victim place and be like, oh, look, I do everything for everyone, and who is helping me? Who is doing anything for me? People never, do the same, and they don't go out of their way as much as I do. and they don't realize that they don't communicate their needs and desires and feelings. They would want their partner to make a romantic dinner for them, but they would never speak about that. They would they would expect their partner to read their mind and somehow maybe figure out telepathically that that's what they need. And they don't do that because, again, lack of boundaries. They aren't taught how to express their feelings and emotions and not feel guilty about that. Another thing is that codependent people find themselves saying yes when they mean no, doing things they don't really want to be doing more than their fair share of the work, and doing things other people are capable of doing for themselves. They're caretakers. They all want to fix other people. They all want to have control over what's happening in other people's lives. And that is, if you're still unsure whether you're codependent or no, if you have some suspicion that you might be, here's some questions that you can ask yourself. Do I struggle to say no? Is it hard for me to speak up for what I need? Is my partner's approval very important to me? Do I often sacrifice my own needs to care for my loved one? Do I often make excuses for my partner's behavior? Saying things like, oh, he isn't disrespecting me, he's just having a bad day, or things like that. Think about it. Do I find myself walking on eggshells around my partner because of fear that they won't love you or they will judge you? Do I believe that I am responsible for my partner's happiness or mood? Am I afraid of expressing my genuine feelings to my partner? If I do express feelings honestly, do I then feel guilty about it? Do I tend to doubt myself and asking myself questions such as, am I the one who is overthinking? Is it normal to ask, do, or think this and this and this? Do I find myself feeling hurt or angry because my partner doesn't notice my needs? Now, if you've answered yes to those questions, congratulations, you are codependent. Welcome to the club. When we talk about codependency, it's inevitable to talk about childhood trauma, and that is because more often than not, this is the root of the learned codependent behavior. How does that happen? Is when children grow up in healthy environments, they get their needs met. However, children who grow up with parents who don't provide a healthy environment and don't get their needs met, they learn how to distort reality. Children want and need to be loved, so they find ways to get it. This is a survival skill. Because they're only children, they can't understand that their parents are limited or unable to give them love or fulfill their role as a caregiver. Now, as children, if we have emotionally unavailable parents or parents who don't pay much attention to us due to many thousands reasons, it could be anything literally, but we don't have our needs met, we don't rationalize about this and think logically, oh, maybe my dad has work to do, that's why he doesn't pay attention to me. We cannot rationalize. We take everything literally as children. So what happens then is instead we think, oh, there must be something wrong with me. I don't matter. That's what the child thinks. And it's also very important as children to have help separating our feelings and emotions, our feelings and thoughts. And when there is an emotional or even physical abuse in the family environment, the child must focus solely on the outside. So over time, he or she loses the ability to generate self-esteem from within. That's why one of the biggest key elements in codependent people is lack of self-esteem or a very, very low self-esteem. Without a healthy inner life, one is exiled to trying to find fulfillment on the outside. This is codependency, and it is a symptom of a wounded inner child. Codependent behavior indicates that the person's childhood needs were unmet, and therefore he or she cannot know who or she is. So we don't realize that when we are children, right? Oh, I need emotional support and I don't get that, so mom, come and give me that. No, you cannot rationalize, as I just said. Everything for children is magical and literal. So then when we carry that wound inside, eventually, as we said, that's a survival skill. We don't think about it. We want to get those needs met, but those aren't our adult needs. Those are our inner child needs that have not been met. And when we go about seeking and pursuing something that can fulfill their needs of the inner child, most often we don't get our needs met because we go about, unhealthy ways to do so. Emotional abuse is sorry and one of the most common reasons for codependency. And when we talk about abuse, we usually associate the word abuse with violence or physical abuse or something very harsh, but in reality emotional abuse is very common, and so many people have experienced that in their life, and it could be as much damaging to our healthy functioning as adults as physical abuse, maybe sometimes even more, because it is hard to identify and not many people are aware of having been emotionally abused. I know for myself, I never thought that, because I didn't have any, like my parents aren't violent people or people um, like bad people. They're not bad people. They gave me what they could. They took care of me. But as much as I started learning about emotional abuse and reading books and getting to know more about codependency, I realized I was emotionally abused, and it was hard to accept in the beginning because, as I said, the word abuse has a very negative connotation. But I made my peace with that, and that's what I wanted to mention. That emotional abuse could manifest in very mild forms of um, mistreatment from your parents, who can leave a big mark and trauma into your inner child's mind, which you then carry into adulthood. Growing up, there were a number of ways we might have felt unsafe or haven't had our needs met, which then threw our inner wounded child in a constant pursuit of getting those needs met from other people, leading to having a lot of unhealthy and toxic relationships. So let's see, how does emotional abuse look like? Well, it could be anything like name calling. They will bluntly call you stupid or a loser. It could be sometimes even said as a joke or sarcasm, but for the small little child, that doesn't matter. As we said, everything for the child was literal. The character assassination is another one. This usually involves the word always. They will tell you something like, you're always late, you're always screwing things up, you're always so clumsy, you're always doing that. And what happens then is that they imprint that limiting belief in you that you are that person. You are the person who is always screwing stuff up, right? Or who is always the reason why, for example, they don't have money, right? And and you carry that limiting belief with you in adulthood, and you believe that that's your ultimate truth. Many people are not even aware that they can change, because the character isn't fixed. We can always change it. We can unlearn those old limiting beliefs and install new, more empowering ones. Yelling is another one. Yelling, screaming, swearing are meant to intimidate you and make you feel small and inconsequential. Sometimes that might be accompanied by fist pounding or throwing things. Now, when we talk about yelling, uh, I just want to mention that every parent yells at some point, right? Because there is no perfect human on this earth, so neither is a perfect parent. Every now and then, a parent might lose their shit, sorry, and yell at you. But it becomes an emotional abuse when that is happening on a regular basis. Your mom might be yelling for the smallest little things or for the biggest things, and it doesn't matter if they're small or big. What matters is that she's yelling all the time, which is abusing you emotionally. Another one is dismissiveness. You would tell them something that is important to you, and they say it's nothing. They'll just say it's nothing, right? Or they might not say anything, or they might say something, but body language such as eye rolling or smirking or head shaking and sighing help convey the same message. And that's very bad thing for a child to have their interest dismissed. Another one is unpredictability, and that was a big one for me in my own childhood. So this is when your parents or one of your parents explode with rage out of nowhere, suddenly shower you with affection, or become dark and moody at the drop of a hat to keep you walking on eggshells. That was a big part of my childhood, and my mom was doing that all the time. Um, for example, I would drop something, and then she would just yell at me and tell me, "You're so clumsy, like, can you be more careful?" Things like that. And I'll be like, feeling anxious and sorry and guilty and all of that stuff. And then next time that would happen, right? I would drop something on the floor, and I would expect that reaction again. But then this time she would be saying something like, "Oh, it's okay. It happens to everyone. Like, don't worry about it." And then what happens is that the child gets confused, right? Wait a second, that was something wrong. I did something wrong the previous time, and that's why she yelled at me. Does that mean if she's not yelling right now that I'm not doing anything wrong? Like, like, for you, there is no clear distinction between what is wrong and what is right, because like they're confusing you very much with their reaction towards your behavior. And then what happens is that you carry that confusion into your future. Um, in your romantic relationships, I did that in my two toxic relationships. I was constantly unsure of whether what I'm doing, thinking, saying is right or wrong, and I would be anxious not to be judged, or I would be I won't be confident taking a stance. I won't be confident speaking up for myself or doing something boldly that I think um, I think it's right for myself. And I would constantly await that negative reaction. Oh my gosh, am I gonna be judged if I say that? Or are they gonna think I'm stupid, or like not worthy of love if I did that? So I would be constantly walking on eggshells around my partners too. Now at least you know where it comes from if that has happened to you. Another one is using guilt. They might say something like, "Oh, you owe me this. Look at all that I've done for you," in an attempt to get their way. Another one, big one, is emotional neglect. As a child, you would tell them that you're sad about something, and they will brush your feelings off as a childhood game instead of listening and helping you cope. Over time, you begin to learn that your emotional needs aren't important. And that can manifest in your romantic relationships in terms of, let's say, something is happening that you're not quite happy about. Might be your partner's attitude towards you. It might be something that you don't agree on. It could be just literally anything. Or a big one for myself was my partner was being disrespectful to me, and instead of me knowing that for sure isn't okay, I started doubting myself. Like, I feel that something is not right, but then I say to myself, "Oh, maybe I'm being too sensitive, or maybe I'm just the one who is overthinking, and maybe it's not even a big deal," right? And when I say, oh, perhaps that's not even a big deal, what I'm actually saying is, oh, my needs, emotional needs, aren't important. My feelings aren't important. So there's no point making a big deal out of something that probably is not. Yeah, that was a big one. Then emotional deprivation. Your parents might have held back affection, praise, and encouragement from you. They would be very careful not to praise you too much for having an A at an exam, or they will never tell you that you're doing a good job at something, to even praise your looks or a nice personality trait you have, right? Tell you something like, oh wow, you're a very good orator. You have amazing communication skills, or look at you, you're so good at volleyball, anything like that. That's a healthy encouragement for a child. And it's not spoiling. Okay, every child has healthy narcissistic needs that have to be met in order for a child to establish a confident, authentic, and strong sense of self. That's very important. And when parents deprive you from that, you never feel good enough. Never. Another one is scapegoating. Scapegoating looks like that. You were criticized for your innate attributes or characteristics such as sensitivity and intensity. You received unequal treatment compared to your siblings. You are not paid enough attention, even when bullied, if you were ever bullied. No one cared enough to know or understand you or listen to you. Yeah, you are just a child, right? Who listens to a child? Your family dismissed or downsized your achievements. These are all ways in which your parents might have emotionally abused you. So I want you to think about how many of those you can relate, and write them down. Write down your experience. Be honest with yourself. How did you feel? How did they treat you? Who did you have to be for your mother or father so they can love you? Every child needs to be loved unconditionally, at least in the beginning. Without the mirroring eyes of a non judgmental parent or a caretaker, a child has no way of knowing who he is. Every one of us was a we before we became an I. We needed a mirroring face to reflect all the parts of ourselves. We needed to know that we mattered, that we were taken seriously, that every part of us was lovable and acceptable. That was the responsibility of our parents. We also needed to know that our caretakers' love could be dependent on whenever we need it. It's not too much to ask for, okay? These were our healthy narcissistic needs. And if we did not get them met, our sense of I am was damaged. And the emotionally deprived inner child now contaminates our adults with an insatiable craving for love, attention, affection, validation, sense of worth, anything that we missed as children. How do we break the cycle? First, I want to mention that it's important to remember that our parents did the best they could, okay, with the level of information, education, emotional, and mental maturity they had. So there is no point in blaming them or holding resentment towards them, because that can only serve to intensify the pain that your inner child may be experiencing. So be mindful when doing your inner healing work. In the next slides, I will share the key steps you need to take to begin the process of self-healing so you can break the patterns of codependency in your future relationships. Let's begin. The first one is acceptance and grief. First, you have to grieve the loss of the parent you never had. And it sounds bad, I know, but it's an important part to be honest with yourself, to really self-reflect on your emotions that you had as a child. Think about it. Really grieve the fact that you didn't get the parents that you needed at that time, the one who put you on your needs first. Accept that your parent was limited, okay? And that's not a bad thing. It was their reality back then. And they could not give you the unconditional love or even deep empathy you needed because she or he just could not get past him or herself to truly see you. Allow yourself to feel your feelings, the anger, the sadness, anything that you're feeling, just allow yourself to feel it. Maybe you've been suppressing your emotions. Maybe you were made to suppress your emotions. You weren't allowed to express them as a child. Allow yourself to feel your feelings now. Emotion has the word motion in it. So allow your emotions to move through you. Accepting this rather than denying it is the first step in opening your heart to healing. Discover boundaries. You are going to need to discover boundaries. Where you begin and your parents end is to free your authentic self. When you choose who you want to be rather than who your parents wanted you to be, you break free from the limiting beliefs you have about yourself. When you begin setting boundaries for the first time with your parents, partners, try to tolerate your own discomfort because it's going to feel very uncomfortable. And that is because you're unfamiliar to speaking up for yourself. It feels unfamiliar. And maybe you're going to want to straight away try and take care of their feelings. You might say something like, no, I don't want to do that. And then instantly feel guilty about it, and maybe you go and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Yeah, we can do whatever you want. And that's completely normal. You just have to learn how to tolerate your own discomfort and to remember that you're not misbehaving, rebelling, or rejecting the partner. You're being you, the real you, maybe for the first time. So, when you set boundaries next time, I want you to breathe, pause, give yourself some space, and then test it. Try just being frank. Try not to rush and take care of their feelings. If being different from your loved one feels uncomfortable, or if you feel that you're risking love with the stance that you're taking, just notice it, okay? Just observe it. Watch how much stronger your bond is than you secretly imagined it to be. And this is the gift of evolving past the scene of the original crime, your own childhood. The last thing that is very important is to learn how to love yourself. I know it sounds cliche, but it's so very important to learn how to do that. People who had any sort of emotional trauma often wonder if they are really lovable. You are. Start loving and caring for yourself in ways that you wished your mom or dad had loved and taken care and cared for you. Start paying attention to what really matters to you, what makes you feel alive, and moments when you feel authentically you. Maybe you will need to reparent yourself. Maybe that means getting reparented by a therapist, or maybe the healing comes from an emotionally reparative romantic relationship. Maybe you have a friend whose mother is nurturing to you, or a mentor who celebrates the real you. All of these people can become part of your collective parent. You don't have to do this alone. No one person is ever capable of meeting all of your needs, so start building your collective parenting community. And once you have learned to parent yourself properly, well, then you will be able to parent your child in the future, or if you have one right now, and then break that generational curse. Don't pass it on to your children. And now I want you to think about, how do you feel about changing yourself? What do you think would happen if you began to change? Do you think you can change? And if not, why do you think so? I want you to write several paragraphs answering those questions so you can gain an insight into your own codependency patterns and make a decision to break the cycle. Because it happens with the commitment and the firm decision that you want to change. Just thinking about it won't do the work. Thank you so much for listening to me and joining this webinar. If you need support into recovering from codependency, I'm here to support you. Thank you very much, and I hope you would have a pleasant rest of your day or your evening.